When the first lockdown for the COVID-19 pandemic began in the UK, pregnancy and maternity services suddenly were interrupted and halted. Loads of things moved online. People talked about a digital pivot. So I set out to ask how people who were pregnant women, mothers who had just given birth or who were about to give birth, how they experienced this sudden digital shift in the conditions of the lockdown home. And I interviewed 14 women, many of whom were new mothers to babies under the age of 4 months, and women who were about to give birth. And the one thing that I heard across the board was that people were trying desperately hard to approximate in-person connections inside the locked down home. Now, over the course of time, scholarship in media and communications has long established that the online and offline are blurry and messy, and these boundaries are not quite as distinct as we think. But the conditions of the lockdown meant, though, that the online and offline were, and they had to be kept separate. And these divides were indeed quite stringent and tracked. So under these slightly different conditions, it appeared that people wanted to approximate in-personness through a range of different ways inside the home. And my paper talks a little bit about the ways in which they did so, by changing the layout of rooms, changing the layout of webcams and cameras, and doing all kinds of things materially to experience and approximate that in-personness. But I also talk about the very gendered exhaustion of doing so. The fatigue, the unsettlement that emerged out of trying to demonstrate the latch of a breastfeeding baby to a support professional on a phone, or getting a physiotherapy appointment after birth on a laptop. And I talk in my paper about the materialities of these things, but also the exhaustion and unsettlement of approximation. And I conclude that whilst this sort of separation of the online and offline was specific to the pandemic, and this might appear to be a rather specific moment in time, these findings actually are instructive when we think about the expectations we hold of the digital, the kinds of things we expect out of digital pivots, and the kind of things we come to expect of the digital when we replace in-person interactions with online interactions. And I hope that you enjoy my paper in New Media and Society.